The day we met the Queen. Chapter 1. A very royal assembly. Can you believe it? Can you believe we're going to see the Queen tomorrow in actual real life? I looked at Michael. We were standing by the bus stop, waiting for Tom and Josie. Michael pushed his glasses even further up his nose and, holding the card to the light, stared at it hard, just like shopkeepers do when they think your money isn't real. But we both knew the invitation was real. The card was so thick it wouldn't let any light through. The writing was fancy and swirly, and there was a thick blob of shiny red wax on the envelope. All those things reminded us that the actual real-life Queen of England had sent it and was expecting us to join her for tea tomorrow. I got my own invitation out from my rucksack and held it up to the light too. Not because I wanted to check if it was real, but because I wanted to look as important as Michael did. Holding stuff up to the light always makes things seem more serious and scientific than just looking down at them in your hands. I guess that's why people in detective programmes or on the telly are always doing it, even when the room they're in is dark and holding something up doesn't make a slightest bit of difference. "Hey!" called Tom as he hurried towards us. Josie was following him and waving as she dribbled her football. Tom's blonde hair was so spiky today it made it look as if his head had lots of tiny shiny pyramids that had suddenly sprouted up on top of it. Josie's red hair was in a short thick plait which looked like a piece of twisted boat rope that someone had cut off in the middle. You knew it was an important day if Josie's hair was in a plait, because she hates her hair being touched or brushed almost as much as she hates beetroot. "You look different," said Michael, staring at Josie's hair as if he wasn't quite sure what she'd done to herself. Josie shrugged. "It's for the assembly. Mum and Dad promised me tickets to West Ham next week if I let them plait it, so I thought I might as well, even if it does make me look a bit stupid. I mean, look at it." Grabbing the end of the plait, she pulled it around the back of her neck and over her shoulder to try and make it reach her mouth. But it was too short. "What's the point of it?" she asked, shaking her head. For Josie, hair only existed for one reason, so that you could suck on the ends of it when you were nervous or needed help thinking. And to do that, hair needed to be loose and free, and unbrushed. "Did you bring your invitations?" I asked. Tom nodded and reached up to check his hair. It was still super spiky. "Mine's in my bag, but..." Dropping his arms, he scowled and added in a whisper, "Mum's framed it." Josie sniggered. What for?" "I don't know," Tom shrugged. "She said anything from anyone royal should always be framed, especially something from the Queen. She's even framed the envelope." "Oh," said Michael, looking down at his frameless invitation as if it was suddenly a disappointment. "Do you have the list of questions?" asked Tom, looking at me. I nodded and patted my backpack. Ever since we had known that we were going to have tea with the Queen of England, me and Tom and Annette and Michael and Josie had spent nearly every break time writing down all the questions we wanted to ask her. In the end, we had 52 questions ready, but then our teacher, Mrs. Khan, had said that maybe we should cut it down to just 2 questions each, because the Queen was nearly 100 years old, and being asked 52 questions might make her fall into a coma. Now we're going to read out the questions in morning assembly and show everyone our invitations and explain why we were going to see the Queen. It made my stomach feel funny every time I thought about it. "Bus is coming," said Josie, picking up her football and joining the long queue of people in front of us. I put my invitation away carefully between 2 of my exercise books and, quickly zipping up my rucksack, jumped on board the bus to school. Running up the stairs, we made our way to the front seats. "Hope Annette remembers to bring his invitation," I said as I squished up next to Tom. "Do you think his foster mum will frame his too? His is probably even more special than ours." Tom shrugged. "Maybe." "Anyone else really nervous?" asked Josie, pulling at her plait again, trying even harder to make it reach her mouth. "I keep worrying I'll forget everything. I hate assemblies." Me and Michael and Tom fell quiet, because we were all starting to feel nervous too. None of us had ever been asked to get up in front of the whole entire school and speak in assembly before. Usually, assembly was the best part of the day because you could just sit and pretend to listen, even if sometimes you weren't listening at all. Even the teachers like assembly because they don't have to be working or trying to keep everyone under control. You can tell that teachers love assembly more than anything else because they always want to get there early, and then when it starts, they sit and smile as if they're thinking about something much more fun that they're actually listening to. But today, instead of Mrs. Sanders, our head teacher, staring out at us through her big square glasses, me and Tom and Josie and Michael and Annette were going to be the ones on stage in the huge main hall. All because the most fun woman on the whole planet had invited us to her palace for tea. And that was because of Annette, the most famous refugee boy in the world, who had not only let us be his friends, but had made every single one of us almost as famous as he was. Just because we had tried to help him find his family and stop the Queen and the government from closing the gates and the borders to refugees like him. I hadn't thought any of those things would make us famous, but for some reason grown-ups get excited about those things that should be normal and that make you famous somehow. As long as... Sorry, it's Tom, so I should do my American voice. As long as I don't forget what I'm supposed to say and go blank, I don't care what happens, said Tom. There is nothing worse than going blank. One time, back in New York, I was supposed to be singing the national anthem on my own, and I went blank for so long I got booed. It's probably a good thing we moved to England straight after. Yeah, said Michael, going blank is bad, but so is sweating. Touching his forehead, he wiped away a big bead of sweat that had appeared. I don't want to go red, said Josie, touching her pale, freckly cheeks. If my face goes red on television, I'll have to move to another country like you did, Tom. I wish Josie hadn't reminded me that we were going to be on television too. Standing up on stage and talking in front of the whole school was scary enough, but knowing that lots of people would be filming us too made it feel 10 times worse. Now that Ahmet was the most famous refugee boy in the world, millions of people had found out we were going to Buckingham Palace for tea with the Queen, and a lot of reporters from the world's press wanted to film our assembly for the news. So Mrs. Sanders was letting them, which meant we were probably going to be on every news channel in the country. Mrs. Khan, who is the best teacher anyone could ever have, said we should try and pretend the reporters weren't there, and that would make doing the assembly easier. But I don't know how anyone can pretend something isn't there when it is, especially when something is real people with cameras who are going to be staring at you. It's always easier for me to imagine things are there when they're not the other way round. My imagination isn't strong enough to make real things disappear. Looking at Michael and Josie, I started to wonder which was worse, going red or going blank and sweating so much it looked like you'd been caught in the rain. I couldn't decide, so I told my brain not to do any of them. Did you practice again at home yesterday? I asked. I did, and Mum said I was good, but that I should stand up straighter. Everyone nodded except Tom. I tried, he explained. I mean, I wanted to, but you know, brothers. Josie gave him a pat on the shoulder. Tom has more older brothers than should be allowed, and they never leave him alone. He has to share a room with 2 of them, and the main things they like doing are play fighting and teasing him and stealing his food, which they do all of the time. I've heard grown-ups tell Tom he's lucky to be the youngest brother, but I don't think Tom feels that way. As the bus came to a stop and we got off and made our way towards the school gates, I told myself that everything was going to be fine. After all, Mrs. Sanders had told us exactly what she wanted us to talk about, why the Queen had invited us, and what we were going to say to her. And Mrs. Khan had helped us write everything and had let us stay in at break times all week to practice too. I had copied out our 10 important questions in my best handwriting so that we could read them clearly, and Miss Hemsey, Ahmet's special teacher, who could speak Kurdish just like he did, had helped him practice his part of the presentation in English so that he could say why it was so special that the real Queen of England wanted to meet him. There were only 2 things that could spoil any of it. The first was if one of us forgot to speak when it was our turn, but the second thing was even worse. And that was if Brendan the bully decided to do something bad to Ahmet in front of the whole school and the world's press. I hoped he wouldn't, but you can never be too sure with bullies, especially not one who hated Ahmet so much that he nearly got expelled because of it. The next chapter is called The Revenge That Stunk. I wonder if it's going to have something to do with Brendan the bully. Remember, he was the one that put beans in Ahmet's special bag that he'd brought all the way from Syria. I hope he's not going to do something else terrible to them. Okay, see you tomorrow for chapter 2 of The Day We Met the Queen. Bye!